Welcome back, everyone, to Ed Up Edge, where we discuss all things career education, leadership, and life hacks. Hear from some of the most amazing and insightful guests in higher education. Let's go. Welcome back to Ed Up Edge, where we talk about all things career education, leadership, and life hacks. And Happy New Year! What better way to start this new season than by bringing back one of my most amazing guests, Dr. Fateri. Welcome, Dr. Fateri. How are you today?
Thank you so much, Kathy. Thank you. Happy New Year, everyone. Thank you for inviting me back to your show. Really appreciate it and looking forward to our conversation.
Absolutely. So I'm going to let Dr. Fateri, introduce himself in a second, but we do have a new administration rolling into town officially next week, and a lot of people are concerned about what does that mean for the education system as a whole. Some people are wary, some people are concerned, some are optimistic, some are pessimists, right? But we're going to walk through some of these topics, and hopefully we'll be able to put some of you at ease, but we're never going to know until we know. So before we get into this topic, Dr. Fateri, introduce yourself to those who do not know you, and tell us about why you're so passionate about education and your journey.
Sure. I've been in education all of my professional life. Of course, that's after working at a fast food restaurant and so forth during college. But I started my career in education, in traditional education, as a grad student, being a teacher assistant, and then I became a professor. Then I moved into administration in the traditional sector, doing research, teaching, and then I really fell in love with the idea of workforce development and career ed. And in 1990, late 1994, early 1995, I joined DeVry. Uh, Back then, it was DeVry Institute of Technology,
Mm-hmm.
but that we later changed it to DeVry University. And now DeVry University, became at Talem, and then DeVry University separated. And interestingly enough, I was on the board of Cogswell Education when we acquired DeVry University, and DeVry University is now part of the Cogswell Education family. Great company. And after that, I was the chief academic officer at Corinthian Colleges, and then 18 years ago, along with some colleagues, we took over International Education Corporation, changed the structure, and became IEC Corp. And I became the CEO and the chairman. And we had 9 campuses then,
Wow.
and in our last count, we had around 60 campuses offering short-term programs in high-demand verticals like healthcare, skilled trades. And I was there until April of 2024, uh, 8, 9 months ago. And at that point, I was able to divest to my partners, and now I am doing other types of work.
I love it. That is definitely a robust background. Okay. And I know that's definitely an inspiration for so many out there. Thank you so much for that intro, Dr. Fateri.
Of course.
So, with the new administration taking charge of the U.S. Department of Education and the former political appointees now gone, people are definitely wondering, okay, what is next? What is going to happen when it comes to our education system? So, what do you think the transition to the new administration means for the future of education policy in the United States?
Yeah. Of course, at this point, we don't know,
Hmm.
but it would be fair to predict the future based on what we know about the people who will be taking over. So I think it would be reasonable to assume and to predict that we would have a strong attempt to streamline regulations and to eliminate unnecessary oversight on in areas that are already covered by other regulators. I think one thing that has happened in politicizing the post-secondary education ecosystem uh, is that all the various regulatory agencies have started moving outside of their jurisdiction and purview. The term regulatory triad may sound familiar to a lot of
Mhm.
your viewers. Uh, the triad was created deliberately and thoughtfully to provide oversight for all the necessary areas. We have the individual states that focus on consumer protection at the state level. Every state, well, not all states, but almost all states have regulatory agencies that provide oversight on mostly consumer protection areas. And then you have the U.S. Department of Education under the federal student aid division. They are the bank for
Mhm.
all of higher education, and they manage funding, and they've done it extremely well, I would say, for the last many decades. And that is mostly managed by the career folks at the U.S. Department of Education, and all the regulations within the U.S. Department of Education surround the disbursement and the proper management of the funds that are dispersed to students, are refunded, and so forth. And then we have the institutional accreditors who are responsible for quality, integrity of student achievement and student outcomes. At the schools, the institutional accreditors are traditional educators like you and me and everybody else that actually has operational and education experience. And they have historically been responsible and have done a fantastic job with that. Because of the politics of post-secondary ed, all of this has become in a way mushy, uh,
Mhm.
and especially with the political appointees at the federal level, all of whom have no experience in post-secondary education. They became incredibly interested and actively engaged in assessing quality without proper regulation and policies to follow. So there has been a discrepancy between what the institutional accreditors were supposed to do, what the states are supposed to do, and the federal government are supposed to do. So in a way, schools have been confused in who does what and when
Mhm.
and how. So that's what's been going on in the last 4 years, frankly. And I definitely see that stopping. I think institutional accreditors should be responsible for quality at the schools they accredit, and they have done a fantastic job. They have very robust standards and criteria and regulations around student achievement and student outcomes and school operations. And they have subject matter experts who've done a great job. Uh, but because of the federal government holding all the money for students, even the institutional accreditors have been under attack by the federal government, including great accreditors like ACICS,
Ah.
fantastic
Mhm.
accreditor like ACCSC. I mean, these are truly amazing, amazing accreditors with a long history of quality, honesty, integrity. and an infrastructure to support all that they do. But again, the politics of post-secondary education has gotten away, has gotten all these schools away from what they're supposed to do, which is focus on student success and placing students at the heart and at the core of everything that we do. I definitely see that becoming more delineated by the new
Hmm.
administration. uh, uh, the U.S. Department of Education going away, and I really don't see that happening. But I do see a streamlining and recalibrating of departments and divisions. I think a lot of the units that were created in the last several years by the Biden administration will go away, and the FSA will become the FSA that it used to be,
Hmm.
uh, and the creditors will continue to do what they're supposed to do without undue pressure from the department. And so I think more streamlining, more clarity, and more collaboration and communication between schools and the federal governments and the accreditors will happen uh, sooner than later.
Absolutely. I love that. One of the major words, one of the most critical words that you said a couple of times is clarity, right? Because it's a trickle down effect. And if the schools don't understand the policies and what's supposed to take place, that trickles down to the admissions teams, right? They don't know what language to use with students. You know, half of this, they don't even understand themselves. I know a lot of advisors who still don't understand accreditation and how to explain it to students and why it's important. But when we talk about the impact of previous policies, and the future of education, you have stuff like standardized testing. So we're hearing
Mhm,
that that may go away, right? I
mhm,
know a lot of students are really excited about that.
uh-huh,
But when we talk about federal funding, some of the funds that were cut, they left different programs like special education underfunded.
mhm,
And the reason why that topic is so, it hits home for me because I have a special needs son, right? And even though my son is not at that secondary, education level, where he is right now, there's so many teachers who are leaving
mhm,
because these schools are underfunded. And I've spoken to so many different teachers in the education system, and they're saying, because we don't have the resources, I just don't have the heart to continue to serve these kids when I know I don't have the resources to help them get to the next level.
mhm,
Right. So preparing students at that level to go into secondary education, I mean, we need to get that together. But
mhm.
how do you feel about the standardized testing going away?
You know, I am just to put it bluntly, I am in favor of it. Even when I was in traditional education, we conducted lots of studies demonstrating that standardized tests that students take, like the ACT or SAT, are not predictive of academic performance.
Absolutely.
And if anything, there is empirical evidence suggesting that the standardized tests actually do not predict academic performance and academic success. I think a lot of schools use them for decades because they did not have other methods to predict academic success.
Hmm.
But I think they have a lot of schools now have developed methods to gauge student abilities and attributes beyond how they do on a test. Because as we know, student aptitude and academic preparation is very important
Hmm.
in doing well in the next levels of education. However, grit, hard work, determination, and resilience, and many other attributes similar to those are far more important than how smart you are. I mean, that goes with the workplace as well. Your smartest people are not your best people. It
Hmm.
just depends how badly you want to succeed, how badly you want to do well, how badly you want to achieve, and those are the true determinants of success.
Absolutely. You brought up a really good point because we have the SAT exams that determine if students get into college. But then in college, you have some entrance exams like the Wonderlic in order to get into certain programs.
Mhm,
And in my experience, I've seen so many students judged on those entrance exams where they were not able to enter a certain program. And then
mhm,
you have some students who came in and they scored over the top, and
mhm.
they were not academically the best students in these programs. So when it
Mhm.
comes to those entrance exams, do you foresee something happening when it comes to those type of testing?
You know, and this is where uh, uh, the tax paying versus not non-tax paying schools come into play.
Hmm.
I think a lot of these standardized instruments, the requirements will go away at the non-tax paying
Mm.
schools. But at the tax paying schools, because we are special, we have been special, I think there will be more requirements
Yeah.
uh, be- uh, for schools that are tax paying. So I don't see that necessarily going away permanently, but it may under the new administration. I just don't know.
Hmm.
What I think the overarching philosophy if of single institution definition, if that happens, I do see a cascading effect of that, meaning that if they start treating tax paying versus non-tax paying schools the same, and when I say they, I'm talking about the U.S. Department of Education, when they start treating schools the same regardless of their tax status, I see policies cascading down equally uh, 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 to all schools. But until that happens, I do see a division between the two.
Interesting. So, how do you think that educators, schools, and districts should prepare for any potential policy changes?
You know, I think one of the biggest issues now that I've been gone, I think,
Hmm.
sometimes when you live in a bubble, and I lived in a bubble for 30 plus years, when you live in a bubble, you don't see, it's like when you're in an aquarium, if you're a fish,
Uh huh.
you can't see inside the aquarium. I had the opportunity to kind of leave the aquarium, and I start seeing inside of it, and I started exploring and talking to lots of people in other industries, and I
Hmm.
realized that what our sector suffers from is a lack of innovation, and I think a
Mm.
lot of that has to do with being overregulated
Yeah.
by so many agencies that, if you think about it, there has been very little innovation in our sector for multiple reasons. One is the overregulation of the sector versus other industries. And the other is that truly education, I'm talking about all of higher education, whether it's regardless of tax status, it's a poor talent industry uh, because a lot of people just don't want to be in higher education anymore. I mean, they really don't. I mean, I was talking to the president of the University of California system not long ago, and he was telling me the University of California system. I mean, this is UC Irvine, UCLA, UC Berkeley, UC San Diego, UC Davis. They're struggling to find people who want to work at
Hmm.
universities. That wasn't the same 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. You had one position and you had 50 people applying for it. Now they're struggling to fill academic positions. They're struggling to fill executive positions, administrative positions. It's because a lot of people don't want to be in higher education for the pay is not as much, the work is a lot, and there's just so much to do. that people are saying, well, it's easier for me to be in tech or to be in medicine. So there has been, I would say, an incredible brain drain from the higher education industry. We've had that in K through 12 for years, right? I mean, who wants to be a teacher? My
Mm-hmm.
daughter was a teacher, and she said, "Why am I a teacher?" I mean, like she joined, and she was a teacher for a while, but because of the bureaucracy, she was super talented and passionate, but she just didn't want to deal with it anymore. So, qualified people don't want to be teachers. They don't want to be instructors. Don't want to be executives. So they're all choosing to do something else. And I think that is a huge problem for higher education in America, and it's something that we need to address in a very serious way.
Absolutely. And the students is who's getting hurt in the end, right? Because there are no teachers to teach our students.
Hmm.
Right now, my son is on his third teacher since September.
Hmm.
The very
Yeah,
first week his teacher went on leave. And then in December, another teacher left. We come back after the new year and it's like, well, who are you? Another person once again. And of course, the schools are making up all these excuses with what's
yeah,
happening, but we
yeah.
understand because even when you see some job ads, like you said, there used to be 50 to 100 applicants, and you're like, oh my gosh, there's so much competition. Now you
Hmm.
see like two people who applied, and it's like, wow, where is everyone? You
Yeah,
know, but people go into this industry because it's something that they feel that they're called to do. And
yeah.
it's going to come to a point where people feel if I cannot make a difference anymore, I'm wasting my time. And then I'm not even being compensated enough for the amount of energy and time that I'm pouring into these students. And
Hmm.
it's disheartening.
Hmm. Hmm.
Wow.
And,
Well,
and 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 that's become really obvious to
yeah.
me in retrospect when now that I'm not in there. Uh, you know, I realize that we compromise, right? We compromise with promotions, we compromise with hires, and because we have to, right?
Hmm.
Because of the talent pool, right? So, uh, and I think that's a real problem. So, you have lots of people, and I'm just being like very blunt and may perhaps unpleasantly honest and direct, but we have a lot of people who are not qualified to be in the positions they hold simply because choices are limited, and employees and workers have options now, not within higher education but outside of higher education.
There you go.
So we need to kind of let go of that level of arrogance of, okay, we are in higher education and people can't leave. No, people leave all the time and they can go to other industries, and they do because they have transferable skills and they have talents, and they could go. So when you find a great person, you've got to hold on to them like they're gold.
But you know what happens? The opposite happens. A lot of times there's a leadership flaw because the most talented employees that companies have, they take advantage of them. And it's
Hmm.
really weird to know that you have someone who is valuable and you feel as if they don't have any options,
Hmm. Hmm.
you know? And then when an employee wants to leave, all of a sudden you're giving them the moon and the stars. Oh, do you need more pay? Well, you
Yeah.
didn't know that this valuable employee needed more pay before.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like
Hmm.
people are choosing themselves, especially post pandemic.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
So, getting into that, what are the most urgent issues in education today that the new administration should address, especially in light of post pandemic lasting effects? What do you think?
I truly think higher education, and I've been saying this actually for several years, and now based on my observations of what's going on in tech, uh, I, my philosophy has been validated that we truly need a transformation in higher education and K through 12 education.
Mm-hmm.
If you think about it, I mean, look at the largest companies in, in America now. Nvidia, Google, Meta, Alphabet. Microsoft, uh, all Apple, all of these companies, they're saying we don't want degrees anymore. You know, we don't want to hire people with degrees. We want people who have skills, who have competencies, and we want people who have the personality to persist and to make us better. This
Hmm.
is so different than how things were before.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things that, and hopefully the new Secretary of Education sees, and everybody else in the country, including the leaders in education in America, is that the way we have been doing things with these diplomas and certificates and associates and bachelors and masters and doctoral degrees. Again, I'm a victim. I've got all of those, right? I've realized in this world, they're all useless because that is not what employers are looking for anymore. And employers truly dictate what all of education is supposed to do, right? So education is no longer something you pursue to find yourself. Education is something you pursue to secure a life that can allow you to meet your financial and personal obligations, and that's what we need to be. Education is an instrument. It's a vehicle. It doesn't dictate what employers should want. It should provide what employers want. And I think that transformation needs to happen sooner than later. I mean, the U.S. Department of Education provides over $1 trillion. It's one of the largest banks in the world to fund education in America. And we need to use this money much more thoughtfully and much more intelligently to build the American people and the American workforce. So using a very, very old paradigm and an old construct to build the students of today is 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 a huge flaw. So I know that's not going to happen overnight,
Hmm.
but this is my belief based on what I have been seeing in the last 9 months. I mean, we have incredibly brilliant young people in tech. They don't have degrees, but they're
Hmm.
building engines that are
Yeah.
going to change the world. They're building engines that are going to change the way we play, the way we live, and the way we work. And here we are giving people bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degrees who don't know anything. And
Yeah.
I'm just being brutally honest.
Yeah, and you know what? There's a lot of social promotion when it comes to college too. How many people breeze through college because they have instructors who just gave them the pass?
Yeah.
Now, imagine how many classes you receive A's and B's in where you know you didn't deserve it. But
Hmm.
now you're placed in a position after graduation based on that credential. And really and truly, you don't understand the work. You don't really have those skills. Neither do
Hmm.
you have soft skills.
Hmm.
You know, I remember over 2 decades ago, when I started in admissions, you needed a bachelor's degree to even be an admissions advisor. I am still
Hmm.
shocked that today there are still so many admissions posts
Hmm.
about needing a BA. You don't
Yeah.
need the bachelor's degree to
Hmm.
become an admissions advisor or even an enrollment leader. You need people skills.
Right.
You have
Right.
to be able to communicate. And like you said, there's so many talented people out there. And so many people, you know, they're avoiding going into different fields because they're saying to themselves, I don't have this type of time to invest in
Yeah.
school. And then when I graduate, they're going to tell me that I need 3 years
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah. Well, I mean, honestly, it has come to a point that a lot of people outside of education make fun of education. I mean, I hate to bring up an example, but I will because I think this is an important subject. For
Hmm.
example, I get it that you need 2 years of training to become a nurse.
Hmm.
I get it. But do you need a baccalaureate degree to be a nurse? Do you need a master's degree to be a nurse? Do you need a PhD to be a nurse? And so here we are, we offer a degree, like a 2 year program that's $40,000, then a bachelor's program that's $60,000, a master's degree that's $50,000, and a PhD program that's $100,000. So here it's going to cost a student $300,000 to get all these degrees for a profession that should take a year and a half to 2 years of
Mm-hmm.
training. So when people say we're overcharging uh, and building student debt, and I'm not just talking about the tax paying career, I'm talking about all
Mm-hmm.
of higher education, right?
Yes.
I mean, why do you need a PhD in something when only a 1 year training is enough, right? I mean, the same thing happens in medical assisting. Why do you need a associate's degree in medical assisting? I mean, I just don't understand. And I think these are the issues within education that have made a lot of it gives fuel to a lot of politicians to criticize all of education and the employers, because the employers are saying, all these people with bachelor's and master's degrees, we hire them and they don't know anything, and we have to
Mm-hmm.
retrain them again. So we have a big problem in education, and we need to face the brutal facts, and we need to accept that we have these issues and these flaws, and we need to rethink who we are and what we do, and because honestly, we're gonna start going away. I mean, if we
Yep.
don't adjust to the new world, I mean, if you think about what's happening to AI and generative AI, and the world is changing, and it will change in the next, I'm not talking about 10 years from now. I'm
Mm-hmm.
talking about next year, the year after. I mean, we can
Yep.
have this interview in a year. I guarantee you there will be many more AI companies doing amazing work, and none of our schools in education now
Are going to be
are
prepared.
have an ability are using AI to deliver, manage, organize, structure education in any meaningful way.
Yeah.
So, but here concurrently, all these kids are building these amazing engines that are going to change the world. I mean, and I'm seeing a lot of it now, and it's fascinating. But it seems like education, it's just like on in an ecosystem of its own that's not even related to any other industry. Um,
Exactly.
and so one of the things I've been telling a lot of my friends in the industry is take 6 months off as a school owner and go study what's going on in the world in other sectors, so you can have a transformative power in what you do and what you teach. We've been teaching medical assistant the same way for the last 50 years. Uh, you know, uh, so things have to change, and
Mm-hmm.
changing the curriculum the way we do, that's not what's needed. I mean, there needs to be a transformative way to address what's needed. And again, we need to import the brains and the talent to help education transform.
Absolutely. Here's higher education, and here's the rest of the world,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So, just like you said earlier, the employers, they have the power now. So they're saying,
Mhm,
okay, all of these degree holding individuals, they don't really have the skill. Yet,
mhm,
still in higher education, we're giving someone a medical assistant certification, but
mhm,
then saying, you know what, you can come back to get your degree
mhm.
because you'll be more marketable. Okay, marketable where? Because if the employers are saying, I don't really need that anymore, why are we still selling that dream to students?
Right.
So now they're
Yeah.
taking out more loans to get a degree, and now employers are like, "Yeah, but I was okay with your certificate. You
Hmm.
didn't
Hmm.
have to go back." So it's like higher education, they're not even on the same page
Yeah.
as the rest
Yeah.
of the world.
Yeah, no, exactly. That is. I mean, again, what we're saying, Kathy, is not very popular. We're not going to make a lot of friends, but
No.
it is the brutal truth, because I can tell you if uh, uh, execs in healthcare, execs in tech, in banking and finance, if they listen to this show, they will say, "Oh my God, thank God somebody's talking about this." Uh,
Yeah.
but the people within our sector, I don't, I think most of them will not agree, because it will rock their world. Literally, it will rock their world. And you know how I always tell people, everybody likes change as long
Mhm.
as it doesn't happen to them.
There you go.
and 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 this is one of those situations that we really need to have the mental bandwidth and the intellectual capacity to transform what we've been doing.
Absolutely. And what about the student learning gap, right? Post pandemic, because you had everyone actually had to go virtual when it was time for the pandemic. But then at the same time, when schools started to open up again, there's a learning gap, right? I remember I had a student, a graduate on I think one of my first seasons, and she was talking about when during the pandemic she had to study from home and she was failing miserably, and the instructors could not understand why. She had
Mhm,
dyslexia. They were
mhm,
not prepared to
mhm,
handle those type of students, right? So
mhm,
now when you
mhm.
transition back into the classroom, there's a huge learning gap there. How do these
Yeah,
students catch up with the rest of the students? Are
right.
we prepared if this happens again? You know,
Mhm,
if in
mhm,
fact you have students who study from home, because there's plenty of people who study at home, but wonder if we're in a situation where this happens again, how are we going to address some of these students who have these learning,
mhm,
setbacks? Are we
mhm.
even prepared for that? I don't think the education system is prepared for those students.
No, well, we're not, and I don't think we will be unless we redesign the way we organize and deliver content. And again, because of the poor talent pool, uh, and I guarantee you, none of your viewers know there's so much happening in the AI world. There is a company, a small company I'm working with now, that they have developed avatars, digital clones of people that can respond to your
Yeah.
emails, attend meetings for you, write your reports in a way, like, how sometimes people joke, "I wish I could clone myself," or
Hmm. Well, it's
actually,
happening.
it's happening. It's happening
Mhm.
digitally, and these companies haven't perfected it. But I can tell you, uh, uh, 8 months ago, this company I worked with, they were at 10%, but now it's at 65, 70%. You can actually, like, you could talk to my avatar next year and you wouldn't know it's not me.
Yeah. And that's scary.
That's scary. It is absolutely scary. But think about it, from an education perspective, what that how it could do. One thing I've been telling people, because everybody's been telling me, in the AI world, that, wow, AI is going to take away my job. I said, no, AI is not going to take away your job. Uh, the person that's using AI and the company that's using AI is going to take away your job, not AI. So if, if,
Hmm.
if my competitor is using AI to enhance delivery, to enhance performance and productivity, if that organization is using AI to improve productivity and performance, they're gonna take over your job, and
Yeah.
it is going to start happening. And that's why one of the things, to answer your question also, to a lot of schools, is start using the basics.
Yeah.
of AI. And when I say AI, I'm not talking about Excel. You know, a lot of people now, because AI is such a fancy term to use, uh,
Hmm.
they think anything that's automated is
Is
AI.
it?
You know, AI, I'm talking about generative AI that
Hmm.
uses the global data to actually create content um, to but to do that, I mean, you know, like learn how to do Chat GPT. I can guarantee you, people who voluntarily, like on their own, like I know a
Hmm.
lot of people myself who use Chat GPT to make improvements to the way they do things. Start using Chat GPT, which I think is probably the most basic
Hmm.
generative AI there is, to enter the AI world. Uh, because it's gonna start making you better.
Yeah.
And you know, you can always resist it, but this is the new world. I mean, this is what's happening out there, and school companies and educators need to start using AI to help them become better in what they do.
Yeah. And it should be a part of the curriculum. I
Yeah,
mean, the world is moving ahead, right?
yeah,
And I think a lot of it has to do with perception
mhm,
and misinformation, right? Because a lot of times when people think of AI, they think of, oh, machines coming in instead of a human and sitting at my
yeah,
desk and,
yeah,
doing the work that I would actually do. But at the same time, like you said, ChatGPT is the most basic. But at the same
yeah,
time, instead of you taking 6 hours to do research
yeah,
about your competitors, right? And you have to go through 10 companies and read up all about them, ChatGPT could do that in 5 minutes and tell you right there, how does your school differ from the
yeah,
other 15 schools that you just told me to research? And now you're
yeah.
ahead of the curve.
Right. Uh-huh.
So it's the way that it's being used. And I think that more people need to be more informed on
Hmm.
how this can actually help.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, from your perspective, what do you think needs to happen to make education more equitable across the US?
You know, actually, that's a very good question, Kathy. I think, uh, and this will sound kind of ironic, because you know the prior administration, they fancied themselves and they positioned themselves with this facade that they wanted to improve equity across America. But actually, in a way, in a very strategic and intelligent way, they wanted to eliminate choice and access for students who needed, uh, for example, career education the most. And
Mm-hmm.
the irony here is, and I've been thinking about this a lot, and the people I had to deal with during the last 4 years, and I'm not talking about the career folks at the department because they're wonderful, but the political appointees, they're all, and again, I hate to say it, but I will. They're all from the Northeast. They're all Harvard graduates, Yale graduates, University of Michigan graduates, University of Chicago graduates. They come from wealthy families. They're highly educated. They're all from the Northeast. They've never been poor in their lives. They are they are telling all of our schools we are hurting students, and without truly looking at the records of student achievement and student performance, but based on anecdotes and based on a political agenda to keep people with low household income in those low household incomes because that's their base. Those are uh, they think their base, uh, for political reasons. It is truly,
Mm-hmm.
I would say, it's one of the greatest travesties in American history, that all these rich, highly educated Northeastern Americans who've gone to top schools, this elitist attitude dictating what's good for people who've never had any education, and they don't have any alternatives either. So they wanted to limit access and limit choice. So one of the best ways to improve equity in America is to provide access and to provide choice and let students make their own decisions. Don't treat students as if they're stupid. They're not.
Mm,
Our students, regardless of household income and race and ethnicity, are very smart. They make good decisions, they're intelligent,
absolutely.
and don't treat them like they need your elitist construct to make choices for themselves. I think to me, that's the most prejudicial approach in dealing with education. You always want choice and you always want access because that will not only provide avenues for all students to get education, but it will improve workforce development. It will improve household income. I mean, look what we have all experienced in all of our careers. All these students going through our programs and getting jobs,
Yeah,
changing their life, transforming the way they lived. It's truly an amazing thing. And that's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about the work is because we truly are the only the tax paying schools are the best platform in education in America that provides that opportunity in a non-prejudicial way for all students.
absolutely. And it's like a trickle down effect, right? So for me, I would say it's like a setup. So there's not enough funding towards Title One schools, right? So those students do not have quality education. And now you have the SAT exam.
Mhm,
So if there's no quality education, those students can't pass an SAT exam to
mhm,
actually get
mhm,
into one of those prestigious schools,
mhm,
right? So
mhm,
that's one way just to hold those students back, and
mhm,
that's one thing that I'm excited about as far as those SAT exams going away. But there
mhm,
needs to be more funding for
mhm,
these low income schools,
mhm,
because what
mhm,
separates them from everyone else, right?
mhm,
It's
mhm,
not their fault, what they were born into. So I think all
mhm,
students need to have equal opportunity. So
mhm,
let me ask you this, and this is an interesting question. If you had the ear of the new
mhm.
Secretary of Education, what three priorities would you recommend to improve education for all students?
Um, I would say, uh, a top priority would be not to necessarily keep the existing structure, to be open to the possibility of looking at things differently. Uh, because if you look at the U.S. Department of Education for the last several decades, it has used the same construct, the same
Mhm.
infrastructure to manage funding for all of education. Uh, so exploring possibilities of what should be done. Why not pairing education with a U.S. Department of Education with a few other departments to manage the money to provide a better infrastructure to support schools? Uh, sometimes the best way to create what's most effective is not to change the structure, is to
Mhm.
create a new one. And I think that's what education truly needs. There are a lot of talented people within the U.S. Department of Education who've been there for many years, but they need good leadership. It's like any other company, right? There are always great employees in every company, but if they don't have a leader with great vision,
Mhm.
uh, a leader who can set a strategy and a plan, the employees can't do anything, right? And
Exactly.
so the new leadership needs to provide that type of vision that transcends the ordinary constructs that have been uh, leading the way in disseminating and distributing federal funds to schools. And I think that's something that can be done. And I think for the first time that is possible, because the new administration is going to have lots of people who are coming in not with the political agenda of necessarily ruining things, but they're coming with the political agenda of running the federal government like a business. And I am hoping that that will have some lasting effects. I mean, we just have to wait and see if that happens. But that's a possibility that I think a lot of us are hoping to happen.
Yeah. Wow. Well, Dr. Fateri, we could go on for another hour.
Yeah,
There's so many things to unfold
yeah,
when it comes to the new administration and what's to come. But I know inquiring minds would love to know, what have you been doing since you left IEC?
yeah. That's an excellent question. I've it's been such a fantastic 9 months for me. I used the opportunity in the last 9 months. I tell my friends I never had this opportunity, but I found the opportunity to reinvent myself. And I think I
Wow.
have. I lost 40 pounds. I exercise 6 days a week.
Love it.
I am just as fit as I am today. I'm 60. I am
Wow.
more as fit today as I was when I played competitive tennis in college, which was 40 years ago. So physically, I'm well. Mentally, I'm well. Intellectually, I'm better. I think I have become. I have learned more in the last 9 months than I did in the last 10 years,
Wow.
because of the people I have dealing with. I wanted when I left IEC, I said, okay, my passion is with education, but we have this huge issue in education, and I know the solution is not within this bubble. So
Hmm.
I started learning a lot about generative artificial intelligence, and as an investor, and I continue to look for investment opportunities in education as well, because IEC has done so well, and I think I can even do better with something else. But I've started working with two companies in AI, small startups with
Hmm.
two brilliant minds, kids. I mean, I call them kids. They don't like it, but I call them. They're 20. One of them is 26. One of them is 28. I think they're doing revolutionary work,
Wow.
and but they're humble. They
Yeah.
want. I've been serving as their mentor for the last 8 months. Uh, Leadership, of course. I don't know anything about what they do, but
Mhm.
I'm fascinated. I'm learning, but they want to understand how to build scale, how to duplicate and replicate, and how to build organizations, how to hire people, how to build people, how to
Love
go
it.
to market. So they've been so humble and open to learning. Again, some people who are super smart and talented uh, have big egos, and they don't have the openness
Hmm.
to learn. They don't have the humility to learn. I always tell people ego is not your amigo, because
It's true.
it's absolutely true. And ego is the foundation for arrogance. And arrogant people never learn and grow because they already think they know everything. So
Hmm.
I looked for young, extremely brilliant minds who wanted to do something amazing, and I'm hoping to use all that in education when I get back into something that I love again.
Hmm.
And I need to have that seed, that school that's going to give me that is going to ignite me to get there.
Mhm. I absolutely love that. Dr. Fateri, I always say that once you continue to have that servant mindset and you continue to pour into people and mentor, your life is always going to get much better, period,
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
you're
Hmm.
humble first, right? So, do you have any final words of wisdom for our audience or anyone who may be feeling weary about the new
Um,
administration and what's to
I
come?
No, I would definitely not worry. I mean, with the new administration, I think things are going to get better for schools, but schools should not get comfortable. My greatest worry with higher education, all of higher education, is not what's going to happen to the higher education from a political perspective, but from an employment perspective.
Mm,
Or it's an existential question: is why
yeah,
should higher education exist if it's not serving a need.
period.
To me, the question is more related to existential issues related to higher education than political and regulatory and legal. My advice to everybody is, and people just don't take this advice because they just don't think it applies to them. Be open to the opportunity to learn something outside of where you're sitting. Be open to the possibility that you don't know what you need to know. Accept the fact that you may be ignorant. Accept the fact that you're not good enough, and allow yourself, give yourself the gift of learning, and explore new ways of getting better at what you do, and humility is the foundation of that.
Yeah.
A lot of people say, I'm humble, I want to learn, I have humility, I want to learn, but they don't, because the minute you want to introduce them to the possibility that they
Hmm.
can do things better, they start becoming defensive. And
Exactly.
and that's why my advice to everybody is, in the school business, in all of higher education: stop giving answers, start learning how to ask the right questions,
Questions.
and listen to people who are smarter than you. I'm 60.
Hmm.
I spend 9 months listening to kids, for the last 9 months, and I am so much smarter because of it. You
Hmm.
never learn by talking. You learn by listening. And it's a skill, but you need to accept the brutal fact that you don't know everything.
Everything.
And it is if people accept that, oh my God,
Hmm.
higher education will transform.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I love that. I think higher education as a whole need to go back to their why. Period.
yeah,
That's what we
yeah,
talk about all the time, right? So go back to your why. Why are you in this industry? Why did this entire higher education start in the first place for the people,
mhm,
right? And I think
mhm,
that we've lost sight of that.
yeah.
So hopefully we can get back to that. Thank you, Dr. Fateri, for
I
another
really hope that you
amazing
enjoyed that
episode. I
episode.
feel
I
a
have
part
been
three
working
coming up
diligently to
sometime.
bring awareness to
But like I
career
said, we could go
schools.
on for another
There's
hour,
so
but it
much
has
that they
been
have
an
to
absolute
offer our
honor
students
to
and our
speak with you
community.
again.
Every
All right.
single role within the
Until next
admissions
time, thank
process
you for
is
tuning in,
critical, whether
everyone,
you're
once
part of the
again for Ed Up
admissions team,
Edge. Take care.
financial aid, career services, academics. Everyone deserves a voice. Admissions is the first point of contact for your school. So you want to ensure that you have a team who exudes confidence, passion, and a clear understanding of effective communication with our potential students. I totally understand the pain of missed class starts, low appointment and enrollment conversions, and this is why I created Next Level Admissions Training by Motivate with K.A.T. This platform is a step-by-step process, and it is going to train your new and tenured advisors in every single step of the enrollment process to ensure that our students are inspired, and they're ready and prepared to start class. Admissions is not easy. It can be very challenging, but it's definitely worth it. So if you're ready to take your school to the next level, head on over to lessons.motivatewithkat.com and check out Next Level Admissions.